Welcome back, Nerdlings. Now, some of you may know I've been a hobbyist for quite a while. In fact, it's actually 25 years to the day that I started. I was 8 years old and my uncle bought me Battle Masters. Now, some of you probably remember Battle Masters. It came in a great big sort of A1 sort of size box. It was a plastic miniature game and it used a big large mat with hexagons on it. And it had a load of snap together models as well. So this sort of opened the Pandora's box that is the world of miniatures to me. From there, I quickly graduated to Space Crusade and Hero Quest, which were both regularly spotted at the local charity store, so I managed to actually get quite a few copies of both. Hero Quest in particular gained my attention with its classic style Chaos Warriors, cheeky goblins and fun orcs. Not to mention they bunged a huge, well, I say huge, but at the time it was huge, gargoyle model with wings in to boot. Now these models didn't even require bases, they came built into the base and it was easy to play with, you could play straight out of the box. Okay, so Space Crusade led to Space Hulk and Hero Quest naturally led to Advanced Hero Quest, which was all very exciting at the time. So models continued to improve and techniques for getting the most out of plastic moulds made leaps and bounds. You know, there were metal models at the time, lead when I started collecting, and then later white metal as well. Eventually I bought a ticket to the Warhammer train, so to speak, and hopped aboard. So for a while, probably throughout my teens, I would say I didn't really give any other manufacturers a glance. It wasn't, if it wasn't Games Workshop, really I wasn't that interested, I suppose. I distinctly remember being quite wrongly disappointed when I received some models from a different manufacturer for a birthday, I think. And I was Games Workshop through and through, so I ended up just putting them in a box somewhere, and I don't think I even painted them. So Warhammer editions came and went. My Undead Army at the time, that was my main army. That went from strength to strength. I think I actually managed to get about 1,000 models into it at one point. And I delved into 40k as well, so I amassed a huge Space Orc army. And dozens of vehicles, especially from Gorka Morka. That was a fantastic game. And it had some really cool plastic trucks and tracks. And loads of Gretchen as well. But still, I still didn't really like other manufacturers. I liked Games Workshop stuff, and that's all I really was into. Now, I remember going on holiday with my family and taking White Dwarf 204 with me, my favourite White Dwarf. That was a bit of a big mistake. Andy Chambers, you owe me a trip to Disneyland, my friend, because I basically single-handedly contributed to my walking around with a glazed look on my face for probably 2 or 3 weeks whilst we were in Florida, because all I could think about, other than the rides and all this other stuff, was a specific campaign that was going on in this White Dwarf. It's the Persinia campaign, and all I could think of were the descriptive passages of it. Tables groaning under the weight of slim space orcs, you know, the heroic last stands of the overwhelmed Imperial Guard, and the brutal counter-offensives of the Space Marines. This was storytelling, you know. Not to mention the escalation of the campaign to epic proportions when Nazdrag captured an additional teleporter and could start bringing down Gargants to the planet. Now, you know, this was fantastic stuff. This was exactly what I really wanted, I suppose. I think I'm probably glorifying it in my head. I've got to say, but really, I need to reread it, and it's been a little bit too long since I've read it. Suffice to say, when I returned from the US from my holiday, I was a changed man. I hit everything with renewed vigour. So my army of choice would be Space Orcs. Slim's army sounded totally mental in size, and that's what I wanted. I went down to South Sea Models at the time, which was sort of it's like an oldie worldy game store, and some of you may have been there. And I purchased as many Gretchen as possible. I think I remember purchasing about 65 Gretchen in one go. and I think they were something like no, I think they were 33p each or something. So it cost me 20 odd quid, and I had 65 Gretchen. Brilliant. Fortunately for me, whilst my Space Hawk habit was in full swing, then Gorka Morka was released. 24 plastic multi-part Orcs and Vehicles, sign me the hell up. I think I ended up buying 4 or 5 Gorka Morka box sets, all told, so I probably had about 100 vehicles at the end, including bikes, which were a separate purchase. Really, I'd like to buy another box set and give it a go now, because my painting and modelling has come on leaps and bounds since then. However, really, things sort of took a bit of a turn for the worse. One day I sat down to paint an orc, and I really literally couldn't find my groove. This happened a few days in a row, and really I think I had burnout, because all I had been doing was painting and modelling miniatures for pretty much years up until that point. Really, I just couldn't get back into it. So I put the miniatures down for a bit, and really I didn't miss them at first, but they were all sort of there, sitting in boxes, and generally making life a misery for anyone trying to get into my room when I was living at home with my parents. I ended up going travelling for a couple of years. I came back and I thought, you know what, I'll give miniatures another go, and I ended up finding an MHAR Tadpole tank. So it's an old tank from, I think it's the First World War. It was one of the first British tanks, and this thing is a great big long sort of almost like a teardrop shape. And this tank was the perfect size for Warhammer, and I really wanted to use it as like a centerpiece for my Death Guard army, which I wanted to start. So I got this baby home and I started working on it right away. I ended up adding some las cannons to it, the side sponsons, and a twin-linked heavy bolter to the front, and a few bits and pieces from the bits box as well, just to sort of spruce it up, I suppose. So what had that begun? Well, my love of proxy models, really, because what I'd only collected before was Games Workshop, and I really had no interest in any other manufacturer. So I started going online, looking for alternatives, or alternative armies, and I was astonished to find pages and pages of manufacturers. I'd already knew there were a few other manufacturers, but I guess in that sort of break that I had, maybe 7 years, a 7-year break, I suppose it was. Hundreds and hundreds of new manufacturers had sort of cropped up. So the new game was afoot. I made it my mission to find every Nurgle inspired model to add to my Death Guard. Now I went online and I pretty much did it. I think. I mean, I have miniatures from Malifaux, Skibor, Ultraforge, Heresy, Armorcast, MHAR, Mantic, Cromlech, Max Mini, Titanforge, Battleforge, Trollforged, Mace miniature. I mean, I've pretty much had just piles and piles of miniatures everywhere. I must have spent more money in those sort of first few months collecting those models than probably all the money that I spent on Games Workshop products prior to that, all put together. and that was from probably about 15 years of collecting up until that point. So that's me and my sort of adventure in lead. Now, over the last sort of, I would say 2 to 3 years, I've really got into the old Hammer sort of ethos, collecting the old models, the sort of the pre-Slaughter era Chaos Warriors and Beastmen and that sort of thing. And I've really sort of taken on a lot of the collections from Ralpatha and Iron Wind, which is Ralpatha US. And really, I've sort of tried to distill the old sort of style of collecting, I think, from what I currently own. Well, where's this going to take us? Well, to that end, my aim is to create an old school Realms of Chaos army. Well, what does that entail? Well, what I'd like to do is introduce that in another video. So the next video, which is going to be tomorrow actually, I'm going to sort of elaborate on what that means for, I guess, not only the channel, because I'll be updating quite frequently about it, but also sort of my sort of hobby ethos, I suppose. Now, what I'm going to be doing is actually uploading every day throughout November, simply because I started my collecting on the 1st of November, and what I wanted to do is sort of, as a celebration of my 25 years of collecting, quarter of a century of collecting, modelling and painting miniatures, is to upload every day in November. So that's the plan. Now this is the first of, I think 30, is it? 30 days in November? So 30 videos that I plan on doing. So fingers crossed I'll get through them all. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks very much for watching. Peace.